When I turned 18, my parents forced me into marriage. No one told me that I'd be marrying my father. Last year, it was my eldest sister. This year, it's my turn. For as long as I can remember, my two sisters and I were raised in a very traditional household. I never could have guessed what was going to happen when I turned 18. We had a lot of unusual rules. Children were to be seen and not heard. There was no laughing or playing. We spoke when we were spoken to, unless we were alone with each other. But even then, it was only hushed tones and hushed voices. I got used to it, not knowing the horrifying secrets my parents were hiding. Our mother was like our teacher. She taught us how to read, cook, and sew. We would sew our own dresses and get beautiful cloths of all colors, except for white. When I asked for white so I could make an Easter dress, I was told that white was only for my day. Looking back at it, I should have realized what she meant. Maybe I could have saved myself. My mother would also sometimes smile and say, "You will make him so happy one day." When I asked who he was, I was spanked with the wooden spoon so hard that I couldn't sit down for 2 days. My eldest sister, Julie, would sneak ice while my youngest sister, Anna, would keep an eye out. If they were caught soothing or comforting me, they would suffer the same, if not worse. Our father had a very good job. When he would come home, our mother would hand him a drink, take off his shoes, and give him a foot massage. He would watch the news while she served him dinner, his slippered feet propped on the ottoman. He would sometimes ask us to show him what we did for the day, be it sewing or penmanship. One day when I was 16, I caught my mother in the kitchen, weeping. She was clutching her pearl necklace, her mascara running down her face, her curls not as tight as they normally were. "Mama," I said timidly. She looked at me and cracked a smile. "Abigail," she crooned. She wrapped her arms around me and sobbed into my shoulder. She stroked my hair. "You know, you were always my favorite, right?" I looked around, hoping none of my sisters had heard that. That day, Father came home with a few different lengths of white cloth for my sister, with a pattern for a beautiful wedding gown. Julie had just turned 18. "It's time you became a woman," Father declared. "It's time for you to be married. You have until 2 days to finish the dress." Our jaws dropped. That was a short amount of time for the delicate pattern. "Father," Julie said timidly, "can Abby and Anna help me?" He looked at her for a moment. "Of course." Father kissed her on the cheek. This was new. He had never shown any affection to any of us before. We got to work, taking turns on the sewing machine. Father and Mother came into the room. Mother was wearing her traveling coat, something that I don't recall her ever doing in my entire life. She was no longer crying, but smiling despite the tears in her eyes. She was wearing her pearl necklace. "Your mother has to go see your grandma back in Oregon. She's very ill," Father stated. "I'm taking her to the airport." We nodded in acknowledgement and went back to work. It wasn't until later that I realized that my mother had no suitcases with her. Father didn't come home until the wee hours of the morning. Julie and I finished her dress. "You are going to look beautiful on your wedding day," I said to her. She started to cry. "I don't want to get married." I tried to console her. Father called for us to put the dress back on the mannequin and come back into the room. "Girls," he cleared his throat, "there was an accident. Your mother's plane crashed, and she's gone." We started to cry, but the wedding ceremony is still happening tomorrow as planned. That night, Julie came into my room after Father went to sleep. She whispered to me, "We're in trouble." "Why?" I whispered back. She shook her head and started to cry. The next day, a strange man came into the house. I was told to go get Julie ready for the wedding. We assumed that the man that came was the groom, but he had said nothing to us. The music started playing on our RCA record player. It was the song "Here Comes the Bride." I helped Julie with her veil, and I walked behind her, helping her with her train. The man that came in was the minister. Father stood at the side of the altar where the groom would stand, holding his hands out to Julie. In one hand was a ring, and in the other the pearl necklace that I had last seen on Mother. Anna and I were too stunned and too scared to speak. Julie was silently crying while Father and the minister were smiling from ear to ear. "Will there be anything else?" the minister asked my father. "No, pick whichever one you want," Father said, regarding Anna and myself. He sized us up for a moment before he grabbed Anna's hand. "Julie, Abby." She started to struggle and cry, but the minister quickly backhanded her. Into silence. They left quickly. "Abigail," Father stated, "you are old enough to make yourself supper. Your mother and I have some business to attend to." He picked Julie up and carried her to the bedroom. Over the next year, life continued as it had. Julie slipped into the role of mother for fear that Father would punish her. Somehow he always knew if we broke the rules. Julie told me, "He's always watching and listening, dear." I'd hear her sobbing when she was alone, but if I went to comfort her, she'd punish me. She continued my lessons, but she wasn't always there, at least mentally. 2 days ago I found her in the bathtub, the water crimson. I had tried to help her, but she was already gone. Before I could even get to the emergency phone, Father was home. He picked Julie up out of the tub. "I'm going to go get help," he said, and left me alone. When he returned, he had white fabric for me to make my dress, and he gave me 2 days to finish it. I asked him if I could get a new pattern online so that it would be different from Julie's. He thought about it for a minute, and he told me it was okay. He had some errands to run, and he'd be back soon. All the websites I've tried to get help on are blocked, except for some sites with patterns on them. I can't find help anywhere, but somehow I ended up here. He's pulling up now. I have to go.